What is up? Welcome back to another edition of the PFF podcast. I'm Mike Renner, joined by Sam Monson and Steve Palazzolo. Steve is not in Cincinnati, though, right now. Steve's joining us all the way from Boston, I believe. Say hi to the people, Steve.
Hi, people. I'm in Boston. You're giving away our secrets, Mike. Yeah, we're on location here.
Yeah, a little different than normal, but we'll power through. Week 17 here. By my count, we have 6 games that have serious playoff implications in terms of it could actually impact a team going in or out of the playoffs. 5 more that have some seeding implications, and then 5 games that, well, they're just for fun at this point. No real anything but draft implications there. So let's get right into it to probably the game with the most playoff implications. 2 teams right now, the Carolina Panthers, who travel to the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons 3-point favorites. If the Falcons win, they're in. If they lose, they could still make it, but they need the Seahawks to lose. The Panthers win, they could still possibly win the division. Now, it's very far-fetched. Now, the Saints would have to lose to the Bucs, and they could still actually get the number 2 seed if the 49ers beat the Rams and the Bears beat the Vikings. Pretty much a long shot there. Where do we like this one going, Sam?
This is great. We get to have a whole new podcast of Mike just reading things out. This is time it's going to be reading out playoff scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fun game. The NFC South was always the most interesting division, I think, because they were all going to play each other at the end of the season. And it was the only division, really, where it was going to take till week 17 for everything to shake out once those games have all been finished. I think the Falcons still have a shot at beating the Panthers. I think this is still a pretty good team. There's still a lot going for them. Obviously, they fell short against the Saints last week, but there was so much bad officiating in that game that they just didn't have a shot at like, there was every single decision went against them in that game to the point where I don't know if they could have overcome that. I think they've got a real shot at actually winning this game and getting themselves into the playoffs that way.
Yeah, the Falcons continue to be that team that we like on paper, but finding ways to lose games. I think they've got a good shot here. I'm interested in this matchup, because Carolina's defense, they made it to the Super Bowl in 2015, basically using their 4-man rush and playing zone behind it. But it's a completely different team this year. Blitz heavy, second highest blitz percentage in the NFL. Want to see how Matt Ryan handles that, because last week, Jameis Winston really torched Carolina's blitz and torched them after the catch. And if Jameis didn't implode at the end of the game with bad fumbles and just whatever else was going on, Carolina had a chance to lose that game, in part because their blitz wasn't getting home, and Matt Ryan, much better passer rating when blitzed so far this season, 101.7 compared to only 87 when he's not blitzed. So to me, that's that little inside the game matchup that I'll be watching if Carolina can get home when they try to send pressure.
Yeah, you mentioned the Falcons looking better on paper than the results have been on the field. They're actually, in terms of our grading right now, the highest graded overall team in the NFL, which a little counterintuitive, but I think it's because of their defense is grading out a lot better than it did a season ago, and they really should be better than they were a season ago. When you look at how many young players they were starting last year, Deion Jones as a rookie, Devondre Campbell as a rookie, Keanu Neal, Brian Poole, all these young players on that side of the ball should be developing in year 2, and some other guys developing in years 3 and 4. And they are in terms of grade-wise, but the results have not been nearly as favorable, and especially, though, it's the offense side of the ball that has been sort of that's taken the big step back. We expected that. But again, they're still grading well there. Matt Ryan grading around the same area he was grading a season ago. Julio Jones. I do think the Falcons are still a team that, if they can make the playoffs, are built to possibly make a run there.
Yeah, both conferences, I think, are almost entirely wide open. I think the wild cards in the AFC are a little weaker, but outside of that, it wouldn't shock me if any team that makes the playoffs in the NFC goes on a run and winds up in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm with you, Sam. NFC is wide open. Any of those teams have a shot. And yeah, the Falcons, on paper could be a little bit better than last year, Mike, to your point. They're a deeper pass rushing team. They should be a team. They have more guys that can get after the quarterback consistently, even without Vic Beasley leading the NFL in sacks like he did a year ago. With this, I think this year proved that maybe last year was a little fluky as far as the sacks go, but plenty of other guys have picked that up, rushing the passer. And honestly, this whole season could just come down to Matt Ryan's ridiculous interception luck, or lack thereof, as he has 12 interceptions but he's best in the NFL at avoiding turnover-worthy plays from a percentage standpoint. So really weird season for the Falcons. But if they do sneak into the playoffs, as dangerous as any team in the NFC.
There's something kind of ironic about the Falcons now having a lot of guys that can get after the passer and none of them being Vic Beasley.
It is. It's hilarious. Last year we were like, no, guys, don't worry about all those sacks from Beasley. He's really not a dominant pass rusher. I didn't think he took a big step back this year. He wasn't expecting that, but we were on the other side of this fence last year.
He has 9 fewer total pressures than Dontari Poe. Now, okay, he's missed a lot of time, but still, we're talking about 281 pass rushes, and he has less overall pressure than a nose tackle.
That's not good.
That's telling.
No, it's not.
I did have to laugh, though. You brought up the turnover worthy throw thing, Steve, and Matty Ice threw the most, representative throw against Marshawn Lattimore, dropped from his wide receiver onto Lattimore's ass cheeks, and then intercepted. That was very indicative of his season up to this point. But like I said, I think it'll turn around, and I think they win this game. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I do as well. I think everybody so far that's filled in the PFF pick sheet, there's still 2 people that haven't, has gone with the Falcons, interestingly enough.
Did I go with the Falcons? I have a feeling I took Carolina.
No, you didn't.
Reason.
You went with the Falcons.
I did go with the Falcons. Okay, good. And it's
These
because
are your picks, Steve.
I mentioned I doubted myself for a second. It's because Matt Ryan torched their blitz last time, just like Tampa Bay did last week. And if Carolina comes after him again, I think it's going to be bad news for Carolina's D.
And as we're talking, Neil Hornsby is filling in his picks and has just picked the Falcons too.
Well,
wow,
that's not good news for them, though.
We should be periscoping our Google Doc live.
Yeah, that would really help the brand. All right, so we Sam and I go Falcons. Steve goes Panthers. Let's keep it moving. On to another game with playoff implications. Bengals travel to the Ravens. Ravens 9-point favorites. All the Ravens need to do is win, and they will be the 5th seed. If they lose, then they either need the Dolphins to beat the Bills or the Jaguars to beat the Titans, and then they are still in. Is there any chance they actually lose, though, and miss the playoffs?
I don't think so. I thought the Bengals had checked out like a month ago after that Steelers game. It was the most typical Lions game ever, that as soon as you assume that they're going to win a game, they end up completely imploding against the Bengals and let them win again. I still think that the Bengals have checked out. So once they go up against a team that actually cares about winning the game, they should go back to being fairly conclusively blown off the park. I would expect Baltimore to win this. I think they're the most competent of the teams vying for the wild card spots. I don't love them, but I think they're capable of doing some things that the other teams aren't. They have got quality in that defense, particularly up front. They can stop the run. Obviously, being down Jimmy Smith hurts them in the secondary, but their other cornerbacks have been playing pretty well. In particular, Marlon Humphrey, the rookie. They've got some good numbers on the back end as well. I think that this is a team that, again, is kind of built to win in the postseason as well, just as long as Joe Flacco doesn't completely implode and play disastrously.
Oh, I have no faith in the Ravens in the postseason. The defense makes them a little dangerous, but look, their defense beat up on bad offenses, like Miami and London. Was it in London? No, Thursday Night Football. They got torched in London. That's what it was. And, week 1 Bengals, when their offensive line was even more of a disaster than they were the rest of the season. I don't think this is a slam dunk for Baltimore, just because you have that division game where it's not like the Ravens have this unbelievable talent advantage, and their defense, I think, can keep them in games. I still just don't have faith in that passing offense. Flacco still averaging under 6 yards per attempt. And our boy William Jackson at cornerback for the Bengals, that's what you're watching for in this game. Watching, maybe the next great corner in year 2 here, in the league leader in completion percentage against when he's targeted.
Yeah, anyone wanting to draw comparisons from this Ravens offense to the 2012 one is just there's no comparison. Like that 2012 Ravens offense, while it wasn't great heading into the postseason, was still so much better than this Ravens offense. In 2012, Flacco had 1,100 deep passing yards and had 11 touchdowns on those deep passes and 0 interceptions. This year, he has 478 deep passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 6 picks on those passes. It's just they've completely neutered the offense since then. They don't have near the playmakers on the outside that they did. They would kill for even a Dennis Pitta at this point in that offense. It's not like they've been lucky to score as many points as they have. That was all I'll say. I think it's been even worse than the stats might say.
Yeah.
Here's another stat for you, though, too. With Flacco, I think when he was at his best those few years, he was not a terrible quarterback at the beginning of his career, He would throw those contested catches, and Anquan Bolden would go up and make plays, and the tight ends, like you mentioned, whether it was Todd Heap or Dennis Pitta, you would let guys go up and make plays because he's not a pinpoint accurate quarterback. This year, he's got the lowest percentage of contested catches that have actually been caught. It's only about 10%, and the league average is up in that 35-40% range. So that's a big part of Flacco's game, is just giving guys a chance to go make plays, and he just doesn't have that on the offense. And I think that's a big part. I'm with you, Mike. It's not the same, not even close to the same offense that they had during that Super Bowl run.
The one thing that's comparable, though, is that in the past few weeks, Joe Flacco is in the best form of his season. Three out of the last 4 games have been his best games of the season. And over that span, he has the 6th most deep passing yards and a passer rating of 102.8, which is somewhere in the top 10 for quarterbacks on the deep ball. So over the season, it's definitely not been the same kind of offense. But Flacco has been hot over the last month, which is it's the only thing that Joe Flacco has over his entire career is that he got hot for that one stretch that ultimately won him a Super Bowl and a $100 million contract.
I'm not even sure that can be qualified as hot, though. Like a 3-game stretch, still
Hotter.
being like 6th is still like that's like you're like forcing a stat there where he's played better, but that's not.
Well, the point is
that's not even close to the stretch he made.
The defense is good enough that if he goes on if he plays like that, that's fine. They just can't have him playing terribly.
Maybe. Yeah. All right. Yeah, so I'm going to go with still the Ravens in this one. It's the Bengals. The Bengals have, like you said, checked out to some degree. I just don't think they're going to be showing up ready to play and enough to pull off the upset. Steve, where are you going with this?
Yeah, I'm taking the Ravens as well. I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be a good, hard-hitting and an AFC North matchup.
Yeah, I'm taking the Ravens. I think they're the team that wants to win this game. I still think that the Bengals have checked out, assuming they're not playing the Lions. So, Baltimore.
All 3 going with the Ravens. On to another game in the AFC with playoff implications. Bills traveling to Miami to face the Dolphins. Bills a 2-point favorite there. The Bills have to win, and then they either need the Bengals to upset the Ravens or both the Jaguars and the Raiders to win. So that would be the Chargers and the Titans to lose. So they need some help. They need to win and some help. If they lose, they are out. Sam, where do you see this one going? Do you think there's any chance the Dolphins beat them with Jay Cutler at QB here?
If Buffalo makes the playoffs this year, do you think they're mad? Mm-hmm. It kind of feels like they've been trying to tank this entire season, and it's just been constantly infuriating them that they somehow remain in contention all the way through the year. It just seems kind of fitting that they'll somehow backdoor their way into the playoffs and be stuck trying to dismantle the team that just got them to the postseason for the first time in years.
It is hilarious. They have the longest playoff drought in professional sports right now. They haven't made it since 1999. And the one year where they're like, all right, we're going to completely rebuild. We're going to scrap this season to, lay the foundation for future years. And then they might make the playoffs. They might actually go back and not get a good draft spot.
Having benched the quarterback that was keeping them in contention for the most time, having to go back for him because the backup was so horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the moves. They trade away Sammy Watkins. They trade away Ronald Darby. They trade away Marcel Darius. And then they bench their quarterback for a rookie 5th rounder. None of those moves would say, I want to win a Super Bowl this year. None of them do.
Yeah, the only move you could say they've made that has been constructive for this year is bringing in Kelvin Benjamin. And even then, if you look at the type of player Kelvin Benjamin is, you could easily make the argument that is not a move that helps Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. We did make that argument. So, I don't want to go as far as to say cynically they traded that specifically to undermine Tyrod Taylor, but you could make the case that it didn't help him.
Hey, Tyrod threw him a couple tight window throws. He had the touchdown that wasn't against New England on Sunday that should have been.
Yes.
Another, tight window jump ball type of deal that Tyrod gave him. They actually explored the space of Kelvin Benjamin on Sunday. Worked a little bit.
Explored the space of Kelvin Benjamin. That's
how's that? Explored the Kelvin Benjamin space.
Interesting phrasing.
That's Let's cut that.
No, I think that the Bills will at least win this game. Will do their part of trying to get them into the playoffs by knocking over the Dolphins, put it in the hands of other people, and I just hope it happens. I think it would be hilarious if this team made the postseason.
I'm going Miami here. I look at this Miami team. They're the Cutler's a roller coaster. Miami's a roller coaster. They beat New England on Monday Night Football, then look terrible the next couple of weeks. But I do feel like they could take advantage of Buffalo's weakness, which is that run defense. That Buffalo, since trading Marcel Darius with just these undersized nose tackles getting destroyed off the ball, linebackers struggling in their run fits. I think this could be a big Kenyon Drake type of game where he goes off, and as long as Cutler's not a disaster, I think Miami's got a pretty good shot here.
Jay Cutler apparently never moved out of the hotel that he came to stay in when he signed with the Miami Dolphins. Has been racking up the reward points for the entire season. He's going to be able to stay wherever he wants for free for the rest of his life, just based on the points he's racked up this season.
I can't even and he's probably not staying at like an extended stay hotel.
No,
he is.
Yeah, he's just day to
blowing
day
through cash. Oh, that's crazy. This is a weird.
No, but he saved on an apartment, man. He didn't have to buy an apartment.
I don't think that's saving on an apartment to rent out a room in a hotel every night.
It's a very classic Jay Cutler story, though. This is a weird game, but also because these teams played 2 weeks ago, and it's one of those. I don't know how the NFL schedules division games like that now, where 2 weeks apart, especially this late in the season. Like if both those teams were in, if the Dolphins were also in contention, that would have been it just seems almost like an unfair that you're playing 2 weeks in a row, like you're that familiar with the team, over that span. I don't know. I just don't like it.
I think, but when it works out with like the NFC South, where all these teams have to play each other late in the season, and that's what defines the season for them all, I think that's what makes it more exciting. It kind of sucks when one of the teams is not in contention at all, and it's just, this is that game again 2 weeks later that we had no interest in the first time round.
This is the second time it's happened to Miami, too, because they played New England 2 out of 3 weeks and now playing Buffalo 2 out of 3 weeks. It's weird enough for it to just happen. We saw the Falcons and Saints do it, but it's happened twice now to the Dolphins in one season. That's crazy.
Yeah. I think this one ends up about where the last one did, because I just don't. You mentioned that Dolphins can run the ball on the Bills, but I don't think they'll be able to pass the ball, which at that point you're kind of like the Texans were against the Steelers last weekend.
They also don't seem particularly inclined to just hand the ball off to Kenyon Drake, even though he's their best offensive weapon. So, yeah, I'm going to go Buffalo.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm taking Miami. I think they'll be a different team at home than they were up in Buffalo, and watch that running game in Kenyon Drake this weekend. They'll give him the ball.
All right, on to another AFC wildcard game. Jaguars traveling to Tennessee to face the Titans. The Titans, if they win, they are in. If they lose, then they would need the Bills to also lose and the Chargers to also lose to still make the playoffs. So they better hope they win. They're a 3-point favorite in this one, but Doug Marrone has said they're all in on beating the Titans. They're not going to bench any of their starters. Easy to say now, but before the game's actually started. But I think they probably will end up playing starters, at least the majority of the game. Where do you see this one going if that's the case, Sam?
I think they need to play their starters. They're a rare case of heading into Week 17 needing to, I don't want to say right the ship, because they're locked in as a division winner. They're going to the postseason, but they just went across the country and got their ass kicked by a team that was looking for the number 1 overall pick a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. They have to be reeling from the way that game panned out. Even though they made it close at the end, Blake Bortles played terribly. We were talking him up on the run he was on this time a week ago, and that completely reversed itself. We got to see old Blake Bortles making mistakes left, right, and center. They didn't get anything done against the 49ers until way too late in that game. I think they need to roll into Tennessee and try and put a marker down that was just a blip. It happens. Every team has a couple of those in the season. They want to put a marker down that they are actually for real again. This is a team that's going to go into the playoffs with some momentum, with the ability to upset teams and to go on a run. And I think they need to play all those guys.
Yeah, it's overrated. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they struggled last week. I'm more concerned with Tennessee completely imploding these last few weeks against the NFC West, losing to Arizona, losing to San Francisco, losing to the Rams, and now they should have been almost a playoff lock at one point, and they they have a chance to just back into the playoffs. I don't think they do a whole lot of damage if they get in, but I do think I could see Jacksonville kind of taking their foot off the gas at some point, no matter what Doug Marrone says. And weirdly, Tennessee killed Jacksonville in week 2, 37-16. Is that still one of the oddest scores of the season when we look back?
It definitely is. I think the Jets actually being the Jaguars was a little odder in retrospect.
Yeah, that's true.
The Jets turned out to be terrible. But yeah, like that's why I think I agree with Sam's point that they need to play their stars. They need to sort of right this ship because I think there's almost a blueprint out there that we saw in that Tennessee game early in the season, that we saw last week with the 49ers, and we saw with the Cardinals. If you go run heavy against them, if you put them in their base formation and get, multiple tight ends on the field, their run fits at the line of scrimmage are just a very big issue at the moment. They just have too many guys trying to make plays and getting out of their gaps. And so teams have been able to pound the ball, and then we saw the 49ers utilize the play action off of that and just tear them apart with it when they have the talent where that shouldn't be the case. You shouldn't be that vulnerable to an attack like that. And I think they're going to have to show that against the Titans here, or else it could spell trouble for them, whether it's the Steelers or the Patriots who they're facing second round of the playoffs.
And this is a really interesting team to put that to the test against, because the Titans are still at their best when they do pound the ball on the ground, when they get all that going, and we're going to get to see if the Jaguars' defensive front is capable of sorting that out, because it is a major problem. You brought it up weeks ago, and it hasn't improved. In that 49ers game, we saw it all game long. They just they're not on the same page when it comes to working together as a unit. You see Calais Campbell slanting inside hard, and the linebackers just don't get to the right place coming over the top to fill the gap that he leaves. And you can't do that against decent NFL teams, because you leave a gap there, and that's a running back gone for a big game. He's into the secondary, and what should have been a couple of yards turns into a 20-yard gain. If that happens more than a couple of times in a game, that's your entire defense getting gashed.
Is this the week that we finally see a workhorse type of performance from Derrick Henry? Because we have a banged up DeMarco Murray, might not even go. And, Henry had a great game against Jacksonville in week 1, 6.6 yards per carry. He's yet to even carry the ball 20 times in an NFL game yet here at the end of year 2. And he's been a pretty efficient runner. He's been more productive than Murray this entire season. Last year, I think there was like a true, thunder and lightning type of component to both of those guys. Henry's been the more productive back this year.
It really is crazy. Crazy their reluctance to not make Henry the feature back at this point. Like the headline this week was DeMarco Murray has a torn MCL, but still might play. That's how reluctant they are to make Derrick Henry. I don't know why. Like, he has obviously been the more productive when they're both on the field. So let's hope he's the one getting the carries for Tennessee's sake.
It's one of the stories of the season for Tennessee, though, just how much that offensive line has taken a step back from a year ago. I mean, they were our number 1 graded offensive line a season ago, and it was so much of that was how well they did in the run game. There really isn't anybody grading particularly well in the run game this season. All 5 of their starters have pedestrian grades at best as run blockers. There's a few of them that are still doing pretty well as pass protection, but that line as a unit is not even close to the same situation they were a season ago.
That's kind of the story, though, of the entire roster. It's like which player outside of Kevin Byard, the safety, no one's really taken a step forward realistically in terms of grading, outside of even Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota has taken probably the biggest step forward outside of Kevin Byard, and the results haven't been on the field. I think that's almost a red flag in terms of the coaching there for Tennessee, I'd say.
Yeah, I don't like the way the roster's trending, especially on the defensive side of the ball. To me, they've needed an influx of youth in the front 7 for a few years now, and they haven't really. It's been a lot of like patchwork veteran type of players, but I still think that they're capable in this particular game. I like the matchup against Jacksonville. I like their ability to maybe pound the rock, and they're Tennessee playing for something versus Jacksonville, no matter what they say, really not playing for anything. I think that'll be a factor.
I still like Jacksonville, though. I'm still going to go Jacksonville just because I think it's by far the better side. I think they will figure it out somewhat defensively, and the Titans just have a lot of issues.
Yeah, same. I think the Jags will give up some big plays on the ground in the run game, just the way, like you say, the way they've been built with those run fits. But I think overall they're better, and they're going to want to make sure that last week was just a fluke, an upset.
All right, on to that last game in the AFC with wild card implications. Raiders traveling to LA to face the Chargers. Chargers a 7-point favorite. Chargers need a win, and then they need some help. They need the Titans to lose as well. They have to have the Titans lose. And then from there, they either need the Dolphins to upset the Bills or the Ravens to win to lock down the 6th seed. So there's a still chance for the Chargers, albeit the longest shot of the 4. Where do you see this one going, though, Steve?
Right to the Super Bowl, Mike. The Chargers
yes.
are going right to the Super Bowl.
Man after my heart.
Oh, man. I'm a little disappointed in what the offense has done these last few weeks. I think the Chargers win. I think they're a better team than Oakland all around. But we talked about Flacco and his last 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. We're just a couple weeks removed from talking about Rivers. His previous month or whatever was as good as anybody's in the NFL. And the last week they put up 13 and then 14 points against the Chiefs and then the Jets. So, it's a capable offense, but the last couple of weeks have not been good. When the Chargers are at their best, though, they're an extremely dangerous team when you've got Keenan Allen outside and Rivers throwing the ball well. I think they missed Hunter Henry at tight end a little bit. Still have Antonio Gates out there making plays, but they're the story of the Chargers season, I think, is they only really put it together for this short mid-season stretch where the offense and the defense were firing on all cylinders at the same time. If they get back to that point, they're as dangerous as any team in the AFC. So that I think they need a complete game because Oakland's playing a lot better, especially on the defensive side of the ball these last few weeks. And the Chargers need to play that complete game. But is it going to be this Chargers team that chokes under pressure again when everything's on the line? It's going to be. I think this could end up being one of the better games of the week, though.
I think their biggest problem is that they ran into a Kansas City team who seems like the only team in the league that understands that about 60% of the Chargers' offense is crossing routes over the middle. So they took that away, and they didn't have anything else. Like they didn't have an answer. So for some reason, most other teams haven't figured out a way to stop them doing that, and they're able to put up points and they're able to move the ball. The Chiefs are really good at taking that away from them, and that's what was the difference in that game. And obviously that put them massively behind the 8 ball in the chase for the playoffs in the AFC West. I think that Oakland's defense strikes me as the kind of defense that will completely allow them to do that all day long, at which point you will see the Chargers back to putting up a huge amount of yardage and points against the Raiders, and that should be enough.
Our boy Austin Gale, though, he's been posting his Raiders numbers out on Twitter, and they've been a lot better against the short pass the last few weeks, Sam. They've tied things up a little bit these last few weeks after having the easiest pass defense to throw the ball on all season.
Yeah, different kind of short pass, though. I suspect there's going to be a bunch of these crossing routes over the middle, and the Raiders are going to give up some yardage.
I still just cannot believe the Chargers are in danger of missing the playoffs. This team, even still, should not be. They should have far more than 8 wins. I know we go back to the field goals at the beginning of the year that could have changed it, but even after that, like if you just look at the grades on paper, Phillip Rivers, 6th highest graded quarterback. Joey Bosa, the highest graded edge rusher in terms of pass rushing. Melvin Ingram, 4th highest graded edge pass rushing grade. Highest graded cornerback. 2 other cornerbacks in the top 20 on that roster. Like just that alone should bring you into that seems like a 12-win team right there. But like if all of these wild card teams, of all of them, I think the Chargers have the best chance of winning multiple games in the playoffs. But at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to make it. Like even if they win, it's stacked against them at this point.
They just put themselves in too big a hole early on because they have some tough teams on their schedule the rest of the way. So they're always going to lose a couple of games down the stretch. You've got the Patriots they had to face. They had to face a good Jaguars team away, in Jacksonville. They had to face Dallas. Obviously, they beat Dallas. And then the real body blow was that second game against Kansas City, which is the one that ultimately broke their back, I think. But they were just down too far at the beginning of the season to climb out of that because they were going to lose a couple of those games.
Maybe we're talking too much about potential, but when you compare the Chargers to teams like the Titans, the Jaguars, and the Ravens, the Jags have that great D. The Ravens have a good D. The Titans, I don't know if they have anything that scares you, but the high end, the best play from the Chargers is right up there with any team in the AFC, right? When between the offense and the defense with that pass rush, the way they cover on the back end, And I think some of the AFC teams are rooting for them to make sure that they don't get into the playoffs because they could be dangerous.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I mean, you know my feeling about the Chargers. We all know my feeling about the Chargers.
You jumped off the bandwagon. You can't. You can't get back on
my bandwagon. I was driving the bandwagon the whole time. All right, I can go with Chargers in this one. Sam.
Yep, same.
Steve.
Also taking the Chargers. Yeah, I think it's another good division game though. Pretty tight.
All right, on to the last game with playoff implications in terms of in and out. Cardinals travel to Seattle to face the Seahawks. Seahawks 9-point favorite. And as I stated earlier, Seahawks need to win, and they also need a Falcons loss to end up making the playoffs. This one I don't think is too much in doubt, but do you envision that being a possibility? Do they really have what do you put their chances at right now, Sam, for making the playoffs?
I don't think they're bad. I thought they were done a week ago. I didn't expect them to go into Dallas and win that game, but winning it really does put them back in the race because although all of us are picking the Falcons, I think all of us expect that game to be pretty close. I think there's a reasonable.
Picked the Panthers, actually.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, right.
I know. I did take Atlanta, Mike. I did take Atlanta.
Gosh. All right.
Okay. Well, either way, I think we all expect that game to be relatively close, and there's a decent chance that the Panthers do win and help the Seahawks in that regard. I think we all expect the Seahawks to beat the Cardinals. So, yeah, I think they have actually got a reasonable chance of getting themselves back in this, which makes them a really fascinating team to make the postseason because, you know, the Seahawks, for as flawed as they are and as many problems as this team's got, I think they're a team that will scare plenty of NFC teams. There's just too much of an unknown quantity about them that if you get good Russell Wilson on a given day, they're going to be a really tough team to put out.
I just completely disagree that they're I don't think between the Falcons and Seahawks, I think if of any team in the NFC that could realistically make the playoffs right now, I would like to face the Seahawks if I'm.
I think the Falcons are a much better side top to bottom, but the Seahawks are all about the unknown quantity that if you get good Russell Wilson playing out of his skin, he is impossible to stop in a way that Matt Ryan never is.
Yeah, I'd be afraid of good Russell Wilson. And look, as depleted as that defense is, I think they showed last week that they could still make plays. It's not Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor. It's not the same guys, but Earl Thomas is still out there, and they've got guys that haven't gotten after the quarterback the same way they have in the past. But even last week, you've got Michael Bennett with 4 pressures, Frank Clark with 7 pressures, Sheldon Richardson out there making an impact. They still have guys that can make things difficult on opposing offenses. I think I don't know if it's just the story of the NFL. Every team's scary in the playoffs potentially, but Seattle's in that boat as much as any other team, in my opinion.
Frank Clark has done a pretty strong run as well. I mean, he hasn't had the best season, and certainly earlier in the year was struggling a bit, but in the last few weeks, again, he's really picked it up. He had 7 total pressure against the Eagles, albeit against their backup left tackle, obviously with Jason Peters down, but he did some damage against Andrew Whitworth and the Rams, then went down to Dallas and again banged up, but 7 total pressures. He's been on a pretty impressive tear.
Yeah, I think we all like Seattle in this one. I want to flip just to the other side of the ball just for 1 second. Bruce Arians going to supposedly leave the Cardinals. I don't know if he's retiring after the season or what he's doing, but they're going to part ways. Do the Cardinals need a complete rebuild of that roster at this point?
Yeah. I think on the offense they do. I mean, we know Carson Palmer's at or near the end, so certainly
there's not really much to build around at the moment.
There's not. I mean, their best player is Larry Fitzgerald still.
Yeah.
He's been there since 2003, whatever it's been, 2004. So, yes, the offense needs a rebuild. I'm very intrigued with what they've added on the defensive side the last few years. You still have Patrick Peterson there and, guys like Budda Baker in the draft, who's been just awesome in his limited playing time. Hassan Reddick, I think he struggled this year, I think, in the transition to linebacker, but he's a talented player. But look, the NFC West is trending the other way everywhere else, right? With San Francisco and the Rams looking better. I'm not ready to write off Seattle going forward. I think they're still just one draft away from kind of getting back on track. So it could be bad for Arizona these next couple of years, but defensively they've got some intriguing pieces, and offense I do think total overhaul there.
Yeah, the offense, if you look top to bottom, the players that have taken snaps this season, there is almost nobody that you would say we need to keep this guy for 2018. I mean, you're going to get David Johnson back next year, which is obviously huge. You're getting one of the most versatile and talented offensive weapons in the entire league. We said that Larry Fitzgerald was their best player. The other wide receivers have been kind of talented and flashed bits and pieces down the years with Carson Palmer, but it's difficult to know how many of those will actually make an impact in a different offense. Outside of that, there's pretty much nothing that you would say to build around. There's nothing that you can say this is definitely a piece going forward. You could easily replace every other member of that offense.
Yeah, I don't know if rebuild's the right word. Just build.
Drew Stanton stays as backup.
Has to.
Obviously, because always.
All right, yeah, we all like Seahawks, though, in that one. And with that, we're going to throw it to our lock of the week. I shouldn't, because they're just going to make fun of me like they do every week. But here we are, Eric Eager and George Chihuahua.
Alrighty, we're back. Week 17, lock of the week. Eric, I would say that we beat the odds just by remaining on air through week 17. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the more positive of the two of us, so I was obviously on the side that said we would make it. So I expect my check. But yeah, we've had a pretty good run. We won last week, and now we're 11-5. So that would make the playoffs in both the AFC and the NFC. So I'm pretty happy.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That's clever. Great. Congratulations. We're making it to the playoffs. That's excellent. Yeah, I guess I'm living here in the pit of misery that is Washington, D.C. during the holidays. So I hope warmth and fun are in your life, Eric. Man. All right, so moving on to things that people actually care about, which is this week's lock of the week. Part of me feels as though every single week a part of my happiness is tied to Dan Quinn's decision-making. And we're going to keep that train rolling here by going to the Carolina-Atlanta game. Carolina is visiting Atlanta. Atlanta has to win this game to make it into the playoff picture. Carolina is a 4-point underdog, and we are not fazed by that. We're going to take the Falcons. So, Eric, when it's, evening, last day of 2017, and I'm standing at the top of my apartment building in the freezing cold, contemplating why did I take Dan Quinn again? What are those reasons going to be? What would scare me the most here?
Well, I think that there's the fundamental law that 3 + 3 is less than 7.
That's good math.
We've been mailing that on the back of a envelope to Dan Quinn all season. It still hasn't gotten there. So, but aside from overall decision making and that kind of thing, I think that the running game for Carolina has really been what has been the catalyst for them moving forward. Christian McCaffrey has, really, upped his game. In addition to the fact that the Panthers are now using Cam Newton far more in that role, he has almost 700 yards rushing. The team as a whole has over 2,000. The Falcons are a little small defensively. They give up more than 4 yards per carry. And in the first game, the Panthers' ability to run specifically with Cam Newton was really the difference. So, I can see that as being an outcome. Now, that being said, what do we agree upon about the running game?
It just does not matter. I do not care. You've already spent 20 times too much time on this segment talking about the running game. So I won't do it any further. I will just say that Cam Newton has been running the ball more kind of after getting over that injury. And if you think about the one thing the Panthers can't have happen in this game, it would be Cam Newton, getting hurt. So if there was going to be sort of a toning down of the design runs for Cam Newton, kind of have to figure it happens here. And I think that takes away from their passing game as well. But let's move on to the other side of things. Number one reason that you like Atlanta here, Eric.
Yeah, I think mostly it's been the same story all season, is that Atlanta has, outperformed, as in terms of their grades, what the outcome has been, right? So, Matt Ryan has had a pretty good season all told. And, the plays that we remember and the market remembers is when he throws the ball off the hands of his receivers and it gets caught by the butt of a New Orleans defensive back, right?
Yeah, we'll bleep that out.
They drive down to the 1 yard line and Devontae Freeman fumbles the ball, right? Or the fact that this season they have, the fourth lowest turnover percentage as a defense, the percentage of drives that end in a turnover. And so, a lot of unstable things have not gone the Falcons' way this year. And so while our metrics really like them, when we've actually backed them, they've done okay. The market, I think, is a little behind there. So we're going to look at the Falcons as being kind of a buy low opportunity, in this one.
Yeah, my favorite thing to do is you look at those passing games and say, okay, where's there an advantage? And if you compare these two passing games, I mean, Cam Newton, when you look at sort of the stable metrics, things that happen from a clean pocket, he's the second least accurate quarterback throwing from a clean pocket. He's sandwiched between, you're going to love this, C.J. Beathard and Deshaun Kaiser. Not a sandwich that I'm buying in any situation. And he's overthrowing guys. He kind of has done that his career. Last year, he sort of figured it out a little bit. This year, he's overthrowing guys from a clean pocket more than any other quarterback. So I'm not super bullish on Cam Newton, throwing the ball, which I think he'll have to do here. And then if you look at Matt Ryan, he's had just this kind of anomalous year throwing the deep ball. He's been top 5 accuracy-wise each of the past 3 seasons. And then this year, it's taken a dip. If there was ever a game where that's going to he's going to kind of figure it out, you'd figure it'd have to be this one. So I don't know. We're going to ride with Dan Quinn one last time, see if he can figure some things out. We really should get one of those signs, though. 3 + 3 is less than 7, because I tweet it, but no one follows me on Twitter, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that the secondary also for the Falcons is a decidedly better secondary than that for the Panthers. And as you said, the deep ball I think is going to be more available to them with the fact that Luke Kuechly is their best defender. With Julio Jones on the outside, Mohamed Sanu kind of over the top as well. I think that presents a decided edge for the Falcons. The Panthers, in terms of their cornerbacks, they don't have anybody grading over a 70, whereas the Falcons have no secondary players that are grading underneath a 70. So even that with, the differential in the quarterbacks is huge, but also the differential in the secondary. So given the importance of the passing game in the league, we're going to go ahead and ride that. Yeah,
remember that in that first matchup, Julio got deep in the first half and then dropped. Everyone remembers that huge drop in the second half there against the Panthers. I would say that if he gets another opportunity, I don't think he's dropping this one, but we'll see. Anyways, that's our last regular season lock of the week, but don't worry, we will be back for the wild card rounds. Got a cool playoff predictions piece coming out, in addition to, of course, the regular 5-pick column on ProFootballFocus.com. Which you should go check out. If you want all of our picks and you have somehow not gotten an Elite subscription yet, figure that out immediately because it will be worth your while for the playoffs. And this is the last segment of 2017. So I don't know. I don't have anything else. Do you have anything wonderful to tell the people?
Yeah, I mean, I have a happy new year. One of the things that we also like in this game.
Thanks.
One of the other things we like in this game is the under. So if you can get the under 47, it's starting to dip down to 46. But I think Falcons have been an under team this year with the sort of pace that they've played games at. Carolina is sort of trying maybe to get out of this game without getting injuries, with the sort of low probability that they win the division. So that's another thing to think about. Not really, not a ton of Mike Renner jokes this week, George.
No, we're all about the giving season here. So just, lots of love to everybody. Thank you for wishing me a happy new year. It'd be really weird if you, wanted it to be sad. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Anyways,
it's literally the least I could do. It's like going for it on 4th and 1 when you're down 5.
Oh God, I know this is going to haunt me. So if you guys are watching this game and you see 4th and 3, just know I'm freaking out. Anyways, that's all we've got. We'll be back next week for the wild card. Stay safe. Back to the main pod.
Lock it up.
You lock it up.
On to some games that have some seeding implications. Saints 6-point favorites traveling to Tampa to face the Bucks. Any chance the Saints drop this one and end up dropping the NFC South?
I don't think there's a good chance, but we saw last week that this Bucks team is capable of playing the rest of the NFC South tough. You know, the Panthers made extremely heavy work of putting them out at the end of that game, or the game generally. So yeah, I think there's a decent chance that the Bucks play the Saints hard as well, and at least make them earn the win that seals the division and takes them into the playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it, Sam. I'm with you on that. I mean, Jameis before Jameis's implosion, he was throwing the ball extremely well, and then the stat line got a little inflated because he had a couple, like a 15-yard post that turned into a 70-yard gain after the catch, which is very rare for that Tampa Bay offense. You don't get a whole bunch of just big yak plays the way they throw the ball down the field, but he's throwing the ball extremely well. Just has to avoid those disastrous fumbles, and I think it's a good matchup with him. And that passing offense looking pretty good going up against that New Orleans pass D.
Yeah, 3 straight weeks of losses by exactly 3 points for the Bucks, and to 3 teams that will likely all end up above 500, the Lions, the Falcons, and the Panthers. So I do think that they could play them close. To be honest, though, I don't think they will. I don't think that the Saints offensively is a good matchup for what the Bucks like to do. And on the other side of the ball, Marshawn Lattimore can take away either Mike Evans or Deshaun Jackson if Deshaun Jackson does even play this weekend. And I just don't think it's a good matchup. I think the Saints just match up really well with the Bucks. So I don't think this one really is in doubt in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean the last game between the two wasn't close, but let's see. I think there's a chance they get it closer than the last time anyway.
Steve, those last 3 weeks though, those kind of sum up what we said about the Bucks earlier in the year, right? Like the record might not be great, but they'll play some teams tough. I think that sums them up. I could see another similar game here as well. They only pressured Drew Brees 4 times on 29 dropbacks back in Week 9. Obviously, have to do a better job of that, Tampa Bay, to have a shot.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we all like the Saints though. At the end of the day, on to some games in the AFC that will decide the 1 and 2 seed here. Still in doubt as the Jets travel to New England to face the Patriots. Patriots a 15-point favorite in this one. They still do have something to play for. They still need to win this game to get the number 1 seed and have home field advantage throughout. Is there any chance this one can even be an upset? I know they played close the last time these two teams faced off.
Hackenberg's the only chance.
That's all I want to see. I don't care about the rest of this game. I watched half of the Jets game this last week just waiting for Hackenberg to get on the field, and it never happened. If we go through this entire season and he hasn't seen the field, I'm going to be upset. It's going to ruin my new year. All I want for this new year is Christian Hackenberg seeing the field against the Patriots.
I
want to see if James Harrison gets unleashed here. Just throw him out there.
I saw someone, though, tweet earlier today. I forget who it was now. They said, should the Jets fans be worried that Christian Hackenberg hasn't played a snap in 2 years? It's like worried. Should they just give up on him, right? Like, it's beyond worried at this point. They should have been worried when he didn't play a season ago.
You should have been worried on draft night when they said his name at the podium. He wasted a draft pick.
Just to remind any new listeners that aren't familiar with the Christian Hackenberg situation, before the draft, we wrote an article that suggested that not only was Christian Hackenberg not worth a second-round pick, he was, in fact, not worth drafting at all based on his college career. So, yeah, Christian Hackenberg looked like a pretty terrible quarterback all through college, and somehow the Jets haven't put him on the field in his NFL career, which suggests that he remains a pretty bad NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I don't see much drama happening in this one. I think we all like the Pats.
Yes.
All right, and then on to the other game for the AFC at the top. The Browns travel to the Steelers. Steelers 11-point favorites. The Steelers win and the Pats lose. Steelers get the 1 seed. So the big story of this game, though, is not that. It is, do the Browns go to 0-16?
I think they do.
Yeah. I thought there was a chance they'd escape when I thought that the Steelers had nothing to play for. And I guess they probably really don't because there's no way the Patriots are losing that game. But this Browns team, not this Browns team, but the Browns have successfully in the past failed to beat a Landry Jones-led Pittsburgh team when they had the chance to win. So, yeah, I suspect the same thing's going to happen. The Browns fail.
And I have disappointment in my voice because I just don't think the Browns have earned 0-16. I think they're a better team than that. Like the 2008 Lions, even if you just go back and look at our PFF grades, by far, like they were twice as bad as the next closest bad team. Like that's how bad they were. They earned 0-16. I feel like the Browns were supposed to stumble into a win or two and just were incapable of doing that. The Lions, were bad everywhere.
Interestingly,
they earned that thing.
The Browns aren't even close to the lowest graded team we have this season.
That's what I mean.
Not even in the same ballpark.
It's like when the Panthers almost went undefeated in 2015. It's like no one felt like that was one of the best teams of all time that was going to go undefeated, but somehow they just kept sneaking into wins. And the Browns, the opposite side of the spectrum, somehow they just keep sneaking into losses.
Yeah,
they were a good team that just got every break that year.
Steve denies he said this, but I'm absolutely certain he claimed that they were going to lose 16 hard-fought games over the course of the season, and that does appear to be what they're doing.
Okay, if I said it, then
well, for once, it actually looks it's going to make you look smart. So I'd start embracing it at this point.
We're looking good. Go Browns. Go get that 16th right now.
Yeah, no one. I don't think anyone's picking the upset though. I think the Steelers run away with it.
Real quick, the Browns have something to play for. They've locked up number 1. They got the number 1 pick. They're good. They're all set there. Now they have something to play for, which is
they're going to bench
no
their
draft
starters
pick on the
now?
line.
They don't have it.
Rest the starters.
Yeah, we got the number 1. Let's rest the starters.
Let's rest the starters. Get the good players in there.
Yeah. All right. On to the Bears, who traveled to Minnesota to face the Vikings. Vikings haven't quite wrapped up the 2 seed yet, although they're pretty close. They're 11-point favorites in this one. It would take a minor miracle for them not to get the 2 seed. They're still going to probably play full strength at this one, though. Where do you see this one? Do the Bears have a chance of pulling off the upset?
They're going to play as full strength as they can. Again, the big concern for the Vikings is that offensive line. They lost Nick Easton last week to a broken ankle, something like that. Pat Elflein at center is banged up. They're not sure if he's going to play. That offensive line, when they have to go into the bench, is ugly. And they're having to go into the bench more and more over the past few weeks. I think that's going to be their Achilles heel in the playoffs. It has the potential to be their Achilles heel in this Week 17 game, even if it might not mean anything. The Bears are a team that has some talent inside on their defensive front. Guys like Akeem Hicks has stopped the run extremely well this year. He's gotten a reasonable amount of pressure. I think they can do some damage against a banged-up Vikings offensive line. That puts Case Keenum under more pressure, and as good as he's been this year, I don't think he's the kind of quarterback that can raise his game in the face of a lot of pressure if that happens. I think if the line is okay, Case Keenum will be fine, but if the line becomes a problem, Keenum's not going to be able to overcome that with his play. Yeah, I think there's a reasonable chance of an upset here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I still like Minnesota in the game, but I could see one of those low-scoring NFC North type of battles. I mean, we were running through some Keenum numbers this week, too. The contested catch percentage we talked about earlier for Flacco being last. Well, Keenum's number 1, and we've been touting Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen and how good they are in those situations. I think that's been a big part of Keenum's success this year is, when he throws those tight window throws, his receivers are making those plays. But if the Bears can't get some pressure on him, it makes that even more difficult. And that's where, Keenum's been good against pressure this year, but it is very difficult to sustain it. So I think the Bears can at least keep it close. I do worry about what they can do offensively against such a tough Minnesota defense, and Trubisky's weakness essentially is blitz recognition, and Mike Zimmer's so good at, double A gap blitz and bringing guys. They don't blitz a ton, but they're very good when they do blitz. So I worry about what Chicago's going to be able to do against that Minnesota pass defense.
Yeah, I do think this one could be very low scoring because the Chicago secondary have been quietly one of the better secondaries in the NFL this season. Kyle Fuller, the highest ranked quarterback in the NFL over the past 4 weeks. But like you mentioned, Steve, Mitch Trubisky against a Mike Zimmer-led defense is just it's no bueno for him.
Yeah, that's going to be an annual.
That just doesn't look good right now on paper for them. So I do think the Vikings come away with the win in that one. On to the last game that has some sort of seeding implications. 49ers, a 3-point favorite, traveling to LA to face the Rams. Not really great seeding implications as the Rams have locked in the 3 or the 4 seed already. But if they lose and the Vikings lose and the Saints lose and the Panthers win, the Panthers get the 2 seed. So some sort of implications. The Rams, though, have already stated they're going to sit their starters. Jared Goff sitting, Andrew Whitworth, a handful of other guys. Not really much to play for. They're just going to let Jimmy G roll, basically, is what they're saying. They want him to get a big head going into next year for them to eventually take him down. I
think it's going to work, too. I mean, he's playing pretty impressively. He looks absolutely like the starter of the future for the 49ers. That team generally is rolling. They look better just because they've improved the quarterback position. Yeah, I think they win and take it pretty comfortably against the Rams backups.
This is a battle of the future of the NFC West, right? Seattle's done. We already talked about Arizona's rebuild. It's all about 49ers and Rams. Jimmy G versus Jared Goff going forward. Too bad we won't see the full Rams out there. But yeah, the Niners, their second half, one of the big stories of the season with what Garoppolo's been able to do and elevating the play of his teammates and everybody around him. And the Rams are maybe the story of the entire season with the turnaround that they've had. And a guy like Todd Gurley, now our top-graded running back. Of course, like we said, those guys are going to be rested. But I like the 49ers. If the Rams are resting guys, the 49ers are rolling behind Jimmy G, and they will again this weekend.
I will say, I'm a fan of Jimmy G. I'm not going to say that he's not the franchise guy there. I think he is. He's exceeded all my expectations. But if there's any reason to pump the brakes, Jimmy G, only 2 big-time throws in 4 starts so far.
Yeah, I dropped that on the QB episode, Mike. It was he's leading in positive grade percentage, so he's moving the chains, he's making good throws, but lowest in big time throw percentage. It's a fascinating breakdown and one that is tough to sustain, I'd say, going forward.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes going forward. I like the 49ers in this one, especially if the Rams are sitting players.
Yeah, it is worth pointing out the receiving group that he's working with, though. You
don't like Marcus Goodwin?
No, I don't think that receiving group is particularly good at all. I think Pierre Garçon was by far their best receiver, and he went down. That left them with not an awful lot to work with. And I think, if anything, Garoppolo is making those guys look better than they are. I don't.
Kendrick Bourne doesn't do it for you.
I think you can excuse the lack of big time throws at the moment, or at least partially put that blame down to the guys he's throwing to.
Okay.
Fair points.
Good points. All right. And that is it for any game with playoff implications. We're going to roll through the last 5 here that mean nothing but draft seeding at this point. So you want your favorite team to lose is all I'll say. It's meaningful draft positioning. The Chiefs travel to the Broncos. Chiefs have locked up the 4 seed in the AFC. Broncos are a 3-point favorite because the Chiefs will be starting the backups. Patrick Mahomes, first look at him in this one. What do we expect out of him, Steve?
The young Brett Favre, as everybody's calling him, right? I'm expecting some excitement. There'll be some highlight plays. There'll be some, a few bad plays, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. I mean, a lot of Chiefs fans wanted him to take over for Alex Smith when Alex Smith was slumping in the middle of the year. So, and I even thought that it was a possibility that they would look to Patrick Mahomes to replace Alex Smith if they just got, sick of Alex Smith, or if he just was the same conservative quarterback that he'd been in previous years. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. I think there'll be the usual boom or bust that we've become accustomed to seeing from Mahomes.
How great would it be if every one of these teams in the last 5 games just went out there trying to lose to get the best draft status possible?
I would love it. I would love to see that.
The NFL would have some sort of complete and total conniption and redo how they do Week 17 entirely based off that. Mahomes is going to be fun, I think. It's worth watching just for him. I got asked on the radio today that, when anyone talks about a gunslinger, it seems like the only quarterback you can then compare him to is Brett Favre, the ultimate gunslinger. But honestly, the guy that Mahomes reminds me more of at the moment is Russell Wilson, in terms of he is more comfortable outside of the structure of the offense than he is just running things from the pocket. And Russell Wilson's pass protection has improved dramatically over the year with Dwayne Brown coming on, and he is responsible for so much of the pressure that comes on him at the moment because it seems like he's happy doing that. He will drop out of the bottom of the pocket the whole way just because it doesn't bother him. And Mahomes, I think, is the same guy in that way, in that he's perfectly comfortable just playing sandlot football back behind an offensive line somewhere, running around, making something happen, finding a guy that breaks open and hitting him. I'm just curious if almost a year of sitting on the bench has, modified him a little bit and got him more of a conventional passer, or if we're going to see the same guy we saw in the preseason, which is just crazy running around behind the line of scrimmage, making magic happen.
Let me pose a question to you guys. What if you're Andy Reid? Is there a stat line or a PFF grade that Mahomes could put up to where you'd say, I'm going to start him over Alex Smith in the playoffs? Mahomes goes out there and goes 35 for 40, 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. Are you still starting Alex Smith
Yes.
next week?
There is nothing Mahomes could show me in this final game to make me start him over Alex Smith in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with Sam here too. Alex Smith was trending to the point where I would consider it. He had those few weeks, but last week against Miami, he looked good. He's been better these last few weeks. And again, if you look at Smith from a big picture this season, he's taken a massive step forward from what he was. He still takes care of the ball and he makes plays down the field. That's exactly what you wanted from Alex Smith coming into the season. So you got to roll with him in the playoffs.
I'm just going to disagree. I'm going to say if he puts up the highest graded game in PFF history, I'd start Patrick Mahomes next week.
Oh, no way. I wouldn't start him, but I think there is something he could show you where I think you could turn to him in a playoff game if Alex Smith isn't getting it done and they're in a hole. Because if nothing else, once you're in a certain hole, Alex Smith is not the kind of quarterback that's going to bring you back in a big deficit. If they roll into halftime 28 points down against somebody and they need a huge offensive explosion in the second half to get it done, Alex Smith has played badly. I think there's a good argument that you would turn to Mahomes and just sit him down, send Mahomes out and say, see what you can do.
Ooh.
Yeah, if they have a playoff game like they had last year against Pittsburgh, where their defense is doing a great job, holds Pittsburgh to 6 field goals, and they continue to just crack down against a good Steelers offense, and the Chiefs offense just can't capitalize. Look, I think that's why they drafted Patrick Mahomes in the first place, is because they said our offense is gonna, it's gonna top out at some point. So that scenario, I would see more likely than straight up benching Alex Smith, but they're not doing it. They will not bench Alex Smith going into the playoffs.
The interesting thing about Alex Smith this year is I think he himself is better equipped to make sure those games don't happen than he has been in years past, because he is a more aggressive, more deep downfield passer. We've said it all season long that the key to him this year is that he's taking those shots. You single up his receivers on the outside, you single up Kelsey inside, he's going to take the shot one-on-one, and that is different to how it's been in years past. I don't think we're going to see a Chiefs offense that's just suffocated and unable to make anything happen for the majority of the playoffs.
All right. What do we like in this one, though? I went Chiefs just because I think the Broncos stink.
Mike, I love it. I took Denver, even though they do stink. I don't know why. No, I do. I mean, I think their pass defense still can make it difficult on Mahomes, as much as I like Mahomes' playmaking ability.
Yeah, it really wouldn't surprise me if Mahomes made enough magic happen to win this game, but I think the balance of probability suggests that with the Chiefs really not caring about this game, the Broncos will win.
All right, on to the Packers, who travel to the Lions. Rematch of Week 17, a season ago, with far less on the line this time. Lions a 6-point favorite. Does it even pay to talk about this game? It's just like so little on the line here. Both teams have no hope of making the playoffs. No chance at this point.
Yeah, Packers lost their game when Rodgers came back. They shut Rodgers down. We're back to the Brett Hundley show, and that's not a show anybody wants to see. Yeah. So I think that the Lions win.
Yeah, I got Detroit here.
I think
my analysis.
We all have Detroit.
Nice.
Not much going on in this one. Another game with only draft seeding. The Texans travel to the Indianapolis Colts. Colts a 3-point favorite. Maybe the saddest game of the entire season.
I was going to say, this is one of the most miserable games I can even think of.
Colts have lost 6 straight. Texans have lost 5 straight. Both have maybe looked worse than their records.
I'm going to pick a tie. With those numbers, I'm going tie.
Yeah, we think both end the season on a mid note, on just a terrible. Yeah, I went
Jacoby
Colts.
Brissett still intriguing, Sam?
I don't know if it's intriguing enough to make me want to watch the game, but this game is just horrible. Like, the Colts at least have some players playing relatively well, at which point I think they've got to be better than the Texans, who seem to have nobody doing well.
I will say I picked the Colts. No, I picked the Texans because the Texans actually don't own their first overall pick. The Browns do at this point, so they don't actually.
They don't
actually want to lose this game.
They're the only team with nothing to play for that actually has something to play for.
They actually want to win, whereas the Colts own their own pick, so they wouldn't mind losing, is what I'll say.
I mean, that's been the theme of our picks here. It's like whichever team's more motivated, we're going to go with, and you dove deep to figure out which team would be more motivated here. That's good analysis there, Mike. I'm going to take Indy.
That's why
for Sam's reason. They have fewer bad players than Houston, basically, at this point.
All right. 2 more games left. Redskins, 3-point favorites, traveling to New York to face the Giants. Giants are going to be without their former number 1 pick, Eli Apple, in this game, and maybe for the next season as well. He's just off in his own world at this point. Redskins, though, like I said last week, their last chance to see if Kirk Cousins is a franchise QB. Where do we pick this one?
I read
big test case.
One of the Washington Redskins players this week say that they really wanted to win this game, get back to 500, end the season without a losing record. Therefore, they want to win it more. Therefore, they win the game.
That makes sense, Steve.
I read that Davis Webb might be taking snaps in the football game.
So the same thing?
Yeah, I just saw.
That's how I read it.
I just looked at both teams on paper and think Washington's much better.
Washington's a better football team.
There we go.
Yeah.
We all get there. We had our different routes.
We're not mailing it in, but this is about what we need to bring to the table here.
We all took different paths and ended up in the same spot.
All right, last game of the week. We finally made it. The Cowboys, 3-point favorites, traveling to Philadelphia to face the Eagles. Eagles have the number 1 seed locked up. They could sit some players, but they said they're still going to start at least Nick Foles. Foles probably needs the practice at this point.
Foles needs the practice.
Yeah. It's just, within the offense. He needs, to face a real defense. Cowboys, though, 3-point favorites. Where do we see this one going?
I mean, in terms of games that don't mean anything, this is actually a kind of interesting one because, like you say, Foles needs to play, needs to get some experience within this offense, get himself as settled as he can be rolling into the postseason. The Cowboys, I mean, even though it doesn't mean anything for them, I imagine they're going to want to at least end the season on a high, especially given how they lost to the Seahawks last week. I think, again, they're strong in some interesting places to give the Eagles some problems on that defensive line. You said before their strength is on the edges there at defensive end, in particular going up against the Eagles' left tackle, the big V, Vaitai. That it looks like a big mismatch, even if the Eagles are able to button up the other side with Lane Johnson at right tackle. I think this is kind of an interesting game. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to pan out.
Yeah, I'm going to go Dallas. I mean, look, when they played Philadelphia last time around, it was a pretty close game until Philadelphia pulled away in the second half, and that was with no Zeke in the lineup for Dallas. And I think they can match up well with the Foles-led Eagles team. Again, that's not necessarily playing for anything, and Dallas looking to finish on a high note. I'll take the Cowboys with just perhaps their starters playing more than Philadelphia's.
Yeah, this was completely flipped a season ago. The Cowboys had already locked up the number 1 seed. Eagles, nothing to play for, but pride at that point. Eagles ended up winning the game. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys in this one to repeat
Romo's last game
of what we saw a season ago.
Yeah, I went with Dallas as well.
All right, there you have it. All three of us going with the Cowboys. Those are the Week 17 picks. Hope you guys enjoyed listening this season. We'll be going throughout the playoffs, previewing every week. Talk to you again next Thursday.